Okay, welcome to this short video. My name is Thea Palu. I was previously the 1+2 Languages Development Officer for Highland, and I am now back teaching at Granton Grammar. So I thought it would be useful to just share some key resources with you to help you support schools in Highland. And when I say you, this session is predominantly aimed at collaborative leads and those supporting schools at that more strategic level. So, to get started, I'm going to just share a wee presentation with you, and the presentation will also be available so that you can access the variety of hyperlinks that are within it. So let's go. Okay. So it's a chance for you to ask any questions or share concerns. I'd like to feedback to you about the recent Scottish Government survey that took place this year and highlight key documentation and support and raise awareness about different opportunities. Now, everything within this PowerPoint is hyperlinked, all the images, and all the files are available for staff on the SharePoint site or the CLPL site. So there is a Jamboard, and you can click this image to get to it. So if you've got any questions, you can pop them on there, and I'll leave it open for a wee while, and then I will PDF it and add it to the CLPL site with this PowerPoint and recording and answer your questions. Okay, so we had a survey this year in 2023, and this survey has happened every 2 years. And it's across the whole of the authority, and it's done across the whole of Scotland. So later this year, we will get all the results, but I thought I'd share the results from Highland just to give you a snapshot so you can think about your own schools that you're working with and how that fits into the bigger picture. Now, bearing in mind, this survey is about what's happening currently in schools like this past session. And so things might be quite different next year. 1+2 should be fully implemented from August 2023. So hopefully these schools that don't have it fully implemented will be moving towards that. So in primary, out of 179 schools, we had 104 that responded, and 67 of those, or 64%, had a full entitlement of L2. So the L2 is the first additional language, which in Highland is French or Gaelic, and full implementation means that they had a curriculum going from P1 through to P7. 34 schools, or 33%, had partial, so it maybe wasn't across the full spread, and 3 schools had no L2. Now, I have contacted those schools, and a list will be shared with you as collaborative leads of the schools who are saying that they don't currently have any L2, and also you'll see here some schools that don't have L3. And that's just so that you can have it on your radar and touch base with them if necessary. So the L3, a reminder, it should be in P5, 6, and 7, and that it can be done in different ways. It could be the same language across all 3 years. It could be different languages in each year. It could be done through interdisciplinary learning. It could be done on a weekly, every single week we do our third language, which might be Gaelic, for instance, or it might be a block, and a block would need to be a good chunk of time, like a term, and that could be just one block in P5, another in P6, and another in P7. So different ways of organising it. Really encouraging to see that there was 84% of schools that were offering an L3, and only 16% of schools that weren't. And here you can see the languages: Gaelic, French, BSL, Scots, and Spanish. Now, it might be that schools this year that aren't offering it were preparing for it. They maybe were undergoing the training associated with offering a language, looking at the resources and planning it in. So hopefully that figure, will increase by the next time a survey is done. And looking at this figure here, although we've only got 64% which have got full entitlement, obviously, we're still coming out of COVID, the recovery curriculum, and these things take time. In terms of secondary schools, we've got the results from 29 of our 29, so 100% return rate here. The L2 should be from S1 all the way through to the end of S3. And we have 55% or 16 schools that offer that, and 13% or 13 schools that only offer partial. Now, that's probably because they maybe do it just in S1 and S2. And then in some of our schools, languages becomes optional. And so in S3, they maybe are still doing a language, but it might be a different language. It might not be the L2. Lots of reasons for that. Some schools encourage language diversity and want to promote a variety of languages, and that can increase uptake because the children are learning a different language. So there's lots of different reasons why that might happen. In terms of the schools, it's really important that the schools know their individual context, their pupils, their staffing, their timetabling, and work out what is going to suit them. And I have touched base with head teachers over the years about this and talked about issues such as, breadth, depth, personalization, choice. But it's very much up to an individual school to work out the best way forward for their pupils, their language department, and their school. The L3 in secondary is slightly different to primary. It doesn't need to be done in S1, 2, and 3. It just needs to be done at some point in BGE. So it could be a block of language, one term of language at one point, in S2, for instance. It could, again, be part of an IDL, cross-curricular type approach. So it doesn't need to be done in the languages department. In some schools, it's the English department that are teaching Scots, for instance, in some authorities in Scotland. So again, quite reassuring. We've got 76% or 22 schools that are offering the L3. That's high, I would say, and only 7 schools that are not offering it. We have a lot of schools that have, 2 languages, French and Gaelic, that are equal weighting. And so that's probably why that is so high. 1 out of our 3 special schools responded and said that they did language. They ticked all these boxes of the different languages that they are offering. So that just gives you a snapshot across Highland. In the past, we have been pretty much in line with the national picture, which, we'll get later this year. So we can share that and see, if we still are in line with it. Okay, so in terms of key documentation that might help you if you're working with schools, and also for yourselves, for your own awareness, I put together a guidance trying to bring together all the different policy documents, all the different resources, and synthesize it into a 2-page document. So you can see it here. It goes through the key expectations so that you know what is expected of L2 and L3, and it links to documents if you need further information. Talks about the choices of languages in Highland and GME, how we teach languages, what would be expected as an overview, and where can we go to get support with that, mentioning the key websites in Highland and also looking further afield. So that, I would say, is a key document for yourselves, but also for head teachers, particularly any new head teachers who are maybe not so familiar with 1+2. I thought this was a really key document for whole school approach. So a head teacher can talk with their staff about the progression across the school from P1 to 7, but also so for class teachers. Again, it's very succinct. It's only 2 pages, unlike, the E's and the O's and the benchmarks, which are a lengthy document. So this really just goes through the key skills that we would expect, simple conversations, moving on to recognizing and reading individual words. So it takes a summary of the E's and the O's, but does it year by year. And of course, all the resources that we have for 1+2 that we use in Highland have all been cross-referenced with this, and so meet the requirements. If you are working with a school, sorry, I've got to just do that. Okay, if you're working with a school who is wanting to look at self-evaluation, then there are 2 resources to support you, one for primary, one for secondary. So down the left-hand side here, we have got some key areas like leadership and curriculum, some criteria, which can be sort of traffic lighted, and where you would go for support, and they are hyperlinked. So if you're working with a school, getting them ready for HMIE, these are the sorts of quick guide, if you like, that you might find useful for you and for them. This infographic here shows the 3 key websites in Highland that we have for 1+2, brings together everything. So I would direct people first and foremost to the Highland Languages SharePoint site. It has everything for L2 and L3 for the classroom teacher, but also for the head teacher from a strategic approach. It has planners, monitoring and tracking, supporting resources like websites, cross-curricular ideas. And it has our Power Language resources. So it has everything that you need, and access to our Gaelic resources, our Gaelic modules for learning and teaching and training. So that's where I would go first of all. It links to both of these other sites, but they are here separately. So the CLPL site, that's the primary languages training site. So for head teachers who maybe want to organize a CAT session or some sort of twilight, there's lots of resources there. If a school's looking at doing BSLs, L3, you'll find videos and training, so upskilling of language skills, also pedagogy, how we teach, as well as strategic stuff like how do we embed languages in a school. Over here, we've got our DigiHub, which was set up in light of COVID, but we've made it really sort of sustainable in the long term to support parents with home learning, with homework, videos, websites, activities, and also ideas for the teacher if they were trying to set homework to support them in their class, and guidance as to what is covered in the courses for parents. So each of these is hyperlinked to go directly to the websites. I briefly mentioned Power Language there. So Power Language is our key resource for French for L2 from P1 through to P7. We did train all teachers in Power Language in the first few years, and then gave all schools individual logins, usernames and passwords. But we no longer subscribe to this website. It was previously called the Power Language platform. But all the resources are still there. They're just now on the Languages Highland SharePoint site. So that's where staff need to go to get the resources. And just a reminder, it can be used for L3 as well as for L2 French, transition, and it has materials for German and Spanish as well, either as L3 or as L2. Now, staff might know this, but message might not have got out to everybody. So if you can help share that, that would be great. That's the only thing that's changed. Our other resources like Go Gaelic and Gaelic modules, nothing's changed. They're still on SharePoint where they've always been. But that's why I just wanted to flag this one up. In terms of HMIE, if you're working with a school, it's worth just pointing out that they are starting to look at languages. They're particularly flagging up, I guess, where it's not happening and where they're not seeing good practice. And they are starting to make comments about languages in their reports. Interestingly, in the Gaelic medium education inspections, 1+2, languages have always been mentioned over the years because languages are a key part, and they're interested in how the Gaelic is taught as Gaelic learners, if it's in a mixed setting, whether that's as L2 or as L3, but how does that support the Gaelic medium education? So, you know, just to say that that's always been there, but now it will be across the board. There'll also be a national thematic inspection later this year of 1+2, looking at learner entitlement and learner progress. So that goes back to schools knowing the expectations for 1+2 and looking at how we monitor and track progress. So all the resources on the SharePoint site will help that. If you're working with a school and there is an inspection due, there is a presentation here from John Paul Cassidy, the lead for languages in HMI. He even includes some slides about a recipe for success, you know, what would be good practice. So it might be worth sharing that and having a look at that. That is available on the CLPL site for schools to access independently as well. Okay, now that we don't have myself or anybody else as a, you know, solely as a 1+2 DO, trying to disseminate information is always is going to be trickier. So Highland Headlines now subscribes to the SILT weekly news e-bulletin, which is every Friday, and SILT is the national body for languages in Scotland, and it brings together different CPD opportunities, resources, news about languages, funding possibilities, so all sorts. So, you know, if you're in schools, encouraging head teachers to maybe, if they should be getting the weekly digest, I believe, and that will have a link to the SILT e-bulletin, and encouraging maybe head teachers to encourage their staff to also look themselves at Highland Headlines, or even choose to sign up individually to the news bulletin if they want to. But trying to get schools to share information. If you're working with a school and they're doing loads of work in languages and they want to really celebrate languages, they might want to look at these 3 events through the year. Equally, it could be a way to kickstart languages in a school where languages maybe isn't happening so much, to give them a sort of focus point through the year. And we have resources to support them as well. So European Day of Languages in September, great opportunity, particularly I think, to celebrate our L3 languages or community languages, languages within a school community. And there are lots of resources on this website or on SILT. And the first week in February is Languages Week Scotland. And there are daily challenges from SILT for that. And every year there is a different theme. Like 2 years ago, it was rights for learners and languages in the diverse world this year. So lots of links across the curriculum. And we have an ebook in Highland that we created looking at French and Gaelic languages and culture. And lastly, the last week of February is World Gaelic Week, and Rory Mackay has put together a thing link with lots of resources for that, for Highland. So should you need anything, you can get in touch with me. I am back teaching at Granton, but I'm more than happy to answer any emails. If it's problems with websites, links aren't working, can't access something, please get in touch. If it's any wider issues, sort of strategic issues, our schools are having problems with things, then May would be the person, May Beaton, to contact in Highland as collaborative lead, and someone who's been heavily involved over the last 7 years at least with 1+2. And Rui Mackay would be the person to contact for anything Gaelic, Gaelic learners, Gaelic medium. He is doing teaching at Glen Urquhart, but he's also in a support role as well for Highland. And as in that support role, he is going to continue to offer some training. So I know for next session, 23-24, he will hopefully be available for Gaelic language training. And also he's just finishing a pilot for live Gaelic lessons for learners in the school day. And hopefully that will be repeated next year. So that is, in a nutshell, is everything. It should all be fairly, hopefully, sustainable, and everybody should have everything that they need. And that just gives you a way in, depending on different issues that schools might be having, or support that they might want. Thank you for your continued support, and bonne chance.